It's now my pleasure to welcome Dr. Michael McCallion, the Reverend William Cunningham Chair of Catholic Social Analysis, to the University of Notre Dame. Or rather, perhaps it is better to say that we're welcoming Dr. McCallion home. Dr. McCallion is a graduate of Notre Dame, completing an MA in liturgy. He's also a well-respected sociologist who has seriously studied the new evangelization in the Archdiocese of Detroit. Our own journal, Church Life, has been happy to publish his work. He is the author of Transforming Catholicism, Liturgical Change, and the Vatican II Church, published by Lexington Books. Dr. McCallion is that unique social scientific researcher who knows the Catholic theological imagination with expertise, and he's placed his own imagination at the service of the Church's new evangelization. So let's welcome Dr. McCallion to speak on the topic of liturgy, sociology, and the new evangelization.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Dr. O'Malley for inviting me, for you being here, and for my wife taking the trip with me. So I got some brownie points there. She's also the best 8th grade catechist I've ever known. So some more brownie points. And I can tell you more why that is the case later. I want to start with a short story about Pope Francis. Last August at our faculty orientation day at Sacred Heart Major Seminary, Monsignor Dan Gallagher was our speaker. Did a great thing on Dante, but he had this story about Pope Francis. He actually works now at the Vatican as a Latinist. And he has an office, so there's 4 priests in it, and they translate, everything into Latin. So he was there for about a year, and Pope Francis had just become Pope, and he was making his way around the Vatican to all the offices, the bureaucracy. And it took about a year for him to get to Monsignor O'Malley's office. And so he finally gets there, and I remember O'Malley, he goes, when I looked at the Pope's eyes, they were just glazed over. And he said, for the first time I realized there's somebody here that knows less than I do. And it was the Pope. I mean, he's just, trying to make it around. But anyway, he was very cordial, the Pope, welcomed everybody, very nice guy. And then on his way out, he turned around and he says, oh yeah, by the way, you guys, how's my Latin? And Dan Gallagher, Father Gallagher, he just said, I put my head down, because he knows one of the priests there is very straightforward and blunt. And sure enough, this priest spoke up and goes, well, Holy Father, actually it's not too bad, but you say this one word, and I can't remember the word, but you always mispronounce it. And the Pope goes, thank you. I knew I was mispronouncing that word. I can't believe it. Thank you for saying that. And he paused and he turned and he said, but you guys still think I'm infallible, right? So I have used that as an evangelization tool, if you want, several times. After Mass, I tell parishioners, I tell my aunt, I even tell the guys on my golf league. I actually, I get through to them. He really was. So it was a great story, and I wanted to share that. And then, so I want to do 3 things. It's just a few introductory remarks, say something about sociology, say something about liturgy, and weave in the new evangelization. So, is this on? Yeah, this on. Soon after I was married, we moved to Redford Township, Michigan, and I moved right across the street from my brother, my younger brother, John, and we thought this was great. I'm not sure about what John thinks about it, but we wanted to be close by family, and of course, my parents weren't too far away. My other brothers were in Livonia, so we were all pretty close. We call it the modified extended family. But my son David had a rabbit named Pepper. And one afternoon, David and my niece Michelle came running up to me, and I was upstairs reading, and they're crying. And they're going, Pepper, this bunny rabbit, right? You've got to come and help Pepper. So I said, sure, and what happened? And we're walking across the street, and they said, well, we wanted to introduce Pepper to our new dog, Popcorn. And it's just this little white fluffy thing, perfect name. But Koala, they also have a German Shepherd. But Koala got a hold of the bunny. And I went, oh man, I know this is not going to be good. So we finally get over there, and sure enough, there's about 5 or 6 other little kids, and they're all crying. And David's crying. And Michelle is crying. And this bunny is obviously dead, you know. So I brought them all to the side, and they're all crying and crying. And honestly, I thought, gosh, you know, so I tried to work up a tear. I really did. I couldn't do it. In fact, that's when I realized I didn't like this bunny. And I thought, what kind of man are you? No, how could you not like him? But it peppered my house with, you know, pellets all the time, and I was the only one cleaning them up. So I said, okay, you guys. I go, Michelle, go get me a bag. And so she got a bag. And then I said, you know what? We all need to say goodbye to Pepper. We all love Pepper, right? And they all, yeah, we love Pepper. And luckily they didn't ask, why aren't you crying, Mr. Mike? You know. So we got the dog. I said, why don't you come across the street and we'll bury Pepper. And so we're in procession across the street. I started thinking about Psalms. There's a couple of Psalms, but we didn't sing Psalms. But we got across the street. I said, David, you dig the hole. So I got a shovel, and David dug the hole. And I said, we'll put Pepper in the hole. And everybody's standing around. They're still crying. We go to put Pepper in the hole, and David goes, well, we can't just put Pepper in the ground. We have to put Pepper in something. And I'm going, yeah, you know, you're right. You guys just hang on. I ran into the house. They find a shoebox. And I'm thinking, this kid's got more, right, ritual sensibilities than I do, you know, and a sense of ceremony than I do. I put them in a box. So I find a shoebox. I was also thinking, this bunny's still aggravating me, even after we get back to the hole. They put Pepper in the box. And then David said, well, we can't just put the dirt on top. We need a cover. And I go, well, David, I couldn't find the cover. And I knew he was going to say that. I said, okay, I'll run in the house. So I ran in the house, and at the same time I thought, the Catholic Household Book of Blessings and Prayers, right? So I grabbed that off the shelf. I run back out, and I got a nice clean table dish drying towel. So they tucked the towel around the bunny like a pall. And then I opened up the book, and I knew there had to be something about St. Francis and pets, right? So sure enough, there was. And I just began reading the text, and it said something like this. It said, St. Francis believes that our pets are like our brothers and sisters. And I couldn't cry for my sister. I started feeling really bad at that point. But honestly, so the kids start crying even more when we read this. So we read that, the scripture reading concluded, and we left. Now, that's one big point that I just want to make, and it's going to be a little, I don't know if it's going to be different than what we've heard earlier. It's always a both and, right, with Catholics. But this ritual stuff works. And I never did have to say anything to them, and they still remembered that years later. Now, 2 reasons, I think. One is, and this is where it might come a little different. So I'm going to bring in new evangelization. I'll say this and then say some more. But this is the part on sociology and community now. I think Catholics have had it right for a long time, if you ask me. And that is, that we've had an emphasis on a communal relationship with Jesus. Certainly a personal relationship with Jesus is important. I'm not saying you shouldn't have a personal, but this communal relationship, I get the sense in studying the new evangelization in Detroit, and of course I'm a sociologist. Of course I'm going to say this, right? The emphasis is going to be on the community and how important it is for us to be in relationship and community. So why did this ritual with Pepper work so well? Is I knew those kids. So not only sociologically would I emphasize a communal relationship with Jesus, here's the next point, and this ain't going to work. You know, I know it's not going to work, but I'm just saying, sociologically it makes sense. Now, there's always two sides of a story. There's some sociologists that emphasize this and some that don't, or at least nuance it. And that is, we have to stay put geographically in order to have community. Now, there's a big argument about that, right? You know, Robert Bella, right? Putman would argue what I'm kind of arguing, right? I kind of agree with Bella and Putman. Putman's book, Bowling Alone, Bella's book, Habits of the Heart. In fact, if I could say one thing about Bella's Habits of the Heart came out in 1985. The subtitle is Individualism and Commitment in American Life. And I remember getting the book, and I started reading it, and I read the whole thing. I just, and I finished it, and I said, this is what's wrong with this country. This is what's wrong with all these Americans, right? They're a bunch of individualistic, no good, on and on. I mean, I was all, fired up about that book. And so I remember I was about to get married, and we went over my wife's parents' house, and we're having dinner, and I said, please pass the salt. And you know those lazy Susans? Remember they sit in the middle of the table and they spin? And I remember her mother saying to me, well, it's right there on the lazy Susan, and I remember spinning that lazy Susan, and it's the most individualistic family I ever met. There is no way I am going to marry into a bunch of... Then I said, Mike, I think you've gone off the deep end, right? Yeah, I know you're on fire about this, but this is going to take it. So, right, there's always a balance. But Bella's book, it's considered a classic already in sociology. And Putman's book, of course, Bowling Alone. But now there's Gary Allen Fine, Claude Fisher, other sociologists that would temper that whole idea. So Bella would say that this community thing is very important. And he relies on Emil Durkheim. And Durkheim, just one great question I think he asked. He asked this question, what is the optimal level of social connectedness? Of course, he never answered it exactly. But if you have too much connectedness, right, it can lead to suicide. So, religious fundamentalists, right, to a certain extent. And if you have too little connectedness, that also leads to suicide. He called it anomie, And the problem today is more on this side, he thought, right, too little connectedness. Our problem isn't so much knowing who we are and being individualistic. It's that we have a hard time, right, finding community, he would argue. So we're in a state of, it's he called anomie, a lack of norms or a sense of normlessness. And so Durkheim asked that question, and the question had to do with collective effervescence. And collective effervescence meant that you had a sense, a feeling of community. And what creates this collective effervescence, right? Or what goes along with it? And his big finding was, right, he goes through this whole epistemology. He wrote the book at the end of his life, Elementary Forms of Religious Life. And it really is, it's social ritual practices. Social rituals. And a big emphasis on the social, right? And that's what he discovered. That was really the heart of his theory and his epistemology, was that this ritual stuff is very important. It makes people feel like they belong, they're in a community, and they know who they are. No big insight. I know liturgists, we're big on this, right, about ritual. So the Eucharist, right, is ingenious from a sociological perspective, right, as well. But there's some things that we could do about that, and which is one of the things I want to get to with a communal relationship, emphasizing that more so than the personal relationship with Jesus. Now, the one big concern that Bella and Durkheim had then was this lack of community because of, here we go, individualism, right? You just start beating people up with this. But I think it's right at some level. At some level, I think it's right. So just a couple little things. We have a hard time. Collective effervescence means that you shut down the self, or you get out of the self into the group. How do you do that? How do we get out of ourselves instead of so much into ourselves? And again, Durkheim would say ritual. The Eucharist should be, right? That's one of the great examples of that. But this individualism, just a couple little things, right out. When I was 11 years old, had my first paper route, and my dad said, "You'll give $1 a week to the house." And I said, "What do you mean? It's my money." Right? It was already in my blood, and I'm 11 years old, right? It's just so pervasive that we're supposed to think of ourselves first. I don't know what to do about it. My niece, I was with her recently, and I asked her how her friend Julie was, and she said, well, Julie wasn't feeling good, and she's really, she's concerned about her weight and her heart, and I said, well, what's going on? And April says, well, what do you mean? I go, well, why is that happening? And, right away, she's not motivated, right? She doesn't have the stamina, all kind of like psychological, individual reasons. And she looked at me and she said, well, what do you mean, Uncle Mike? Is there some other reason? I go, well, April, it could be because she hangs out with you. And you guys drink beer and eat pizza. You don't eat salads and take walks every day, right? So, again, our first impulse is more the psychological, individualistic, I think, explanation. I walked all winter this year. Just one interesting thing I thought. This is the first year I didn't see one snowman on the lawns, not a one of them. I thought, holy, I don't know what's going on there. But and then we just lead. There's a couple of great books on this, mobile lives. We're just mobile. I don't know, how do you build relationships that way? So Dave Pachoda on my golf league 2 weeks ago tells me that he's leaving. He bought a place down in Myrtle Beach, right? And so right away I go, Dave, why'd you do that? And it's just the American thing to do, is just to move. Anyway, it's a real problem for building community. We kind of live desynchronized, as sociologists call it, lives, even with close friends, because of this mobility. when we get to liturgy, I could say a few things here too. And that is, the first thing I think of is homilies when we get to the liturgy. And what I say here is that I wonder if this would work. I mean, pastors, you know better than I, but couldn't there be a homily about staying put? Couldn't there be a homily like, please don't move out of the parish, stay here. If you get a new job, is it possible to still stay in this house and travel to work? If you have more children, could you build a house, build a bigger house, or build an addition on the house that you're in, right? Instead of moving. And it's just, I know it's not going to work. It's pie in the sky. And, I've moved several times, but just think about how many parishes have you been in? Members of parishes. I don't know. I think we move in and out of parishes quite a bit too. And that can be a problem. We know that all the social sciences agree on this, that we become who we are in part by the influence of our communities, our socio-cultural contexts. It's just to state the obvious. Several of the speakers have already said something about that. I just wanted to put more emphasis on the ritual, and the ritual as a means of building solidarity. So to continue then with the liturgy, what other ways in the liturgy can we build these communal bonds? And I think here's a big one that I'll talk briefly about, and it's to the musicians in particular, and I'm sure you've talked about this, and we've heard this over and over. When I was here at Notre Dame, I had Dr. Mark Searle, and he was the first one that talked about this that I had heard of, right? But it's ritual music, and what he said was, every Sunday I go to Mass, there's a hymn I don't know. Often 2 hymns I don't know. My parish, we have 2 hymnals. I don't, there's 1,100 songs. No community can possibly embrace all that. So I don't know, I don't know. Searle, he said there should be no more than 50 now. Of course he's not around to defend himself. I don't know what the number is, but it certainly isn't 1,100. And why, after all these years, it could be me, something wrong with me. And we can go back to Pepper, there's something wrong with me. But I don't know a hymn by heart. Or a responsorial psalm by heart. Or, and my sense is that those who, the musicians, they get sick of the songs. I don't know if that's true, but we don't. I only hear it once a week, if that. So ritual music would be a big way, and again, almost all of the social sciences, especially anthropologists, if you want to build solidarity and you want to build collective effervescence, one of the best ways is through music. But they have to know the music, not just even understand it, just know the words and be able to sing it. So that's a big one. The other one is, somebody mentioned earlier about liturgy and play, how important play is, the purposelessness of liturgy, that we should just be able to play at it. And the only reason that you can play well, I think, in the liturgy is if you know the structure, inside out, and we know this as well. Any game that a child likes to play, it's because they know the structure, intimately, and they know what's what. And so that's a big part as well. My brother John asked me if he could come to midnight mass with me. And I said, sure, and he hadn't been to church in 10 years. And I remember walking to church saying, I hope the pastor gives the best homily ever. I hope the EMEs know what they're doing. I hope the altar servers don't trip over their shoelaces, I hope the cantor sings well, et cetera, et cetera. But none of it mattered. John, I looked over, he broke into a sweat. He couldn't remember when to stand, kneel, forgot the words of the Our Father. He just didn't, he was caught up in the ritual structure too much to appreciate it. And of course, we know the spontaneity that comes from the strictness of rules. As soon as someone cheats, we know the importance of that. So we have one guy on our golf league. It's just horrible reputation. He cheats. And everybody knows it. And he's the best golfer on the league practically. He's one of the top 5, And it's just so part of him. My brother-in-law knows him real well, and I don't know him too well, but he says it's just a part of him. He goes, Mike, he just does it. He just can't believe it. The big way he cheats is, you mark your ball on the green. So when he goes down to mark his ball, he throws the marker up closer to the hole. Yeah, I guess I've never seen it, but anyway, yeah. So, but and children, not a bad move, but children know this inherently too about anybody who cheats. Yeah. Another thing I think music is probably the biggest thing in the liturgy that can create this collective effervescence if people know the music and know it well. I was just talking to Dr. O'Malley earlier saying, I was wondering if there's any research monies. One of the things I'd like to do, and I don't know if anybody's done this, is at my parish, the musician says we're the best singing congregation in the diocese. And I'm thinking, where are you looking? Or, I don't know what. And then there's books right out there saying why Catholics can't sing. Well, I think it would be a nice research project just to actually gather some data on how many people are actually singing. Men, women, children. And I was thinking we could start by just looking at the opening song and maybe the preparation of the gifts song. Because I'm not sure methodologically how to do it. You'd have to get a lot of people to each take a couple rows and actually count. And then how many people actually pick up the hymnal or don't pick up the hymnal? Does anybody know the song by heart? Right? But just some data on that. It'd be interesting, I think. It'd be a start. But music-wise, it would be something to do. The next thing liturgically is just from this ritual collective effervescence community dimension is liturgical processions. So I don't know why we don't have more of these. Any kind of, everybody knows communion is powerful. You see everybody going up. It's a powerful ritual practice, and people like to get up and they move and they feel bodily part of it. I don't know, why couldn't we do more entrance, exits? I don't know, the water right, everybody moves. I don't know if it would take a lot longer if it's done right. And if it doesn't work, well, then just don't do it again. But more processions would be, fewer meetings, more processions, right, would be the way to say that. And then the local parish, just in general, keeping the liturgy in mind. Sociologists call them special purpose groups. And could be any kind of group that develops in the parish. It could be, scripture study. It could be adult ed. It could be Christian service. I mean, I don't see what's wrong with the card club, to tell you the truth. They're coming there. So what? They're coming, they're playing cards. I don't know, maybe something could develop, from that. Bowling, sports. So a multiple of special purpose groups, and lots of parishes do this. And that's the only reason why I don't get carried away about individualism, because I think there's a lot of Catholic parishes or congregations in general, that have robust community lives. It's more outside of the parish that I see the advanced kind of individualism, but also within parishes. And that's the other reason why, but anyway, you want to develop, if a special purpose groups arise around some issue, why not let it happen? It revitalizes the faith sociologically. I mean, there may be some theological issues that perhaps you have to deal with some of these groups, but you know the people, so you just go talk to them. The pastor just goes talks to them. The Directory of Popular Piety, remember 2001, I think it came out, has all kinds of great ideas. There's one about bonfires in there. I mean, why don't kids love bonfires? There's a blessing, there's a saint associated with it, there's a little ritual, I guess. I mean, why not have that, again, to build that community life? So there's lots of opportunities, what we would say, through special purpose groups, and let them develop, let them happen. And I know problems can arise, but it seems to me at a local level, the pastor, whoever, can handle that kind of a situation. So parishes, too, are a great place for this community building to happen. In fact, if I could, on the local parish, say, so Christian Smith's talk last night, I asked Chris if he was going to be here today, and he said no, he's flying to China this morning. So I said, oh good, I can talk about you then, you're not going to be here. No, I didn't say that, but he's not here. And I'm sure he would say, again, this is a both and kind of situation. But given that the family is somewhat in disarray, right, or several families are, it seems to me that perhaps the parish needs to beef up its activities to help those families. There's a big saying, in sociology, as the family goes, so goes religion. And Smith, he is right in with that line of thinking. But I don't know. I just think perhaps parishes should build more special purpose groups, maybe, to help families who are in disarray, especially with their kids, children, etc. But in the Archdiocese of Detroit, 50% of our parishes don't have a youth minister. And the 50% that do, they're part-time. Again, sociologically, the infrastructure's simply not there to make these ministries happen, to make community building happen. And I just interviewed 45 of these youth ministers, and 60% of them are looking for another job as soon as they can get it. So there's no stability, there's no staying put. Staying putness is what, I don't know what to do about that. But the community phrase, as soon as somebody leaves, it's difficult, but certainly there's got to be a powerful, strong pastoral staff. And the parish needs to be open all night. It needs to be open in the evening. And there's got to be staff there to close it up. And there should be devotions, and there should be, I don't know, it should be rocking every night of the week. And we know this is the case. We know this is the case with Kensington in Detroit, just up the road from us. I mean, they have 10 youth pastors. I mean, it's just amazing. But, so, and then that all, of course, comes down to money, et cetera, et cetera. I don't want to get into that. But we definitely need trained, right, formed, well-formed, but pastoral staff, and we need more of them, not fewer, in parishes. And again, sociologists are going to say it's going to be in the parish, not at the diocesan level, not at the vicariate level, but at the parish level is where evangelization is going to happen, right, or take place. So, what ritual dynamics can the local parish produce to create collective effervescence, which creates community, which creates identity? And the primary way is the liturgy. And the liturgy, I agree with some people who said that. The liturgy is going to be the primary way. That's where everybody goes. I mean, you know, the people who attend, they go to Mass on Sunday. And, right, it's a communal relationship with Jesus. We see Jesus in the Eucharist when this community gathers. So that communal emphasis, I think, is very strong there. And needs to be accentuated through all whatever ritual dynamics we can use. So more ritual music, more ritual processions, in order to emphasize a more communal relationship with Jesus, which to me is extremely Catholic and always has been, given that we're a sacramental church. Now, Dr. O'Malley, in his book, Liturgy and the New Evangelization, I just have a couple more points and I'm done. We can talk. In his book, pages, you've got to read pages. Well, you should read the whole book. It's really good, I think. But pages 129 to 133, he has, there's a heading in there, a subheading called A Lay Movement for the Liturgical New Evangelization. Right? And he's just talking about, he's talking about like a liturgical center in the heart of the city. And I keep thinking, why not a parish? You know, let's make it a full-blown parish. But in the heart of the city, where the liturgy, right, is the heart of everything for the young people who attend. And he's thinking mostly of young people and youth, but anybody, right, that could attend. And so there's liturgy of the hours, there's devotions, there's Eucharistic adoration, but it's going on day and night. There's lay preaching, clerical preaching, right, et cetera, et cetera. And I would add, well, why not a full-blown parish? Why aren't we doing that with Christian service, et cetera, et cetera? Again, even in O'Malley's description, when you read it, it's really good. Who's going to do it? You need professional people who've got some Catholic, right, theological background, like most of us, who know what they're doing. They know the Catholic tradition, and they are getting paid well so that they stay put. That could happen, and that could be a whole new evangelization effort right in the heart of the city, where the poorest live. And so I end with just a quote, so community, liturgy, and collective effervescence. I just end with a quote from Gaudium et Spes, and just to emphasize that communal part, that God did not create us for life in isolation, but for the formation of social unity. So also it has pleased God to make men holy and save them, not merely as individuals, without any mutual bonds, but by making them into a single people. This solidarity must be constantly increased until that day on which it will be brought to perfection. Okay, thank you.
We have about 20 minutes now for any comments or questions around the talk or points of clarification. So I would just thank you for your presentation. I would say it's been my, a lot of anecdotal kind of, evidence of what we're seeing in trends. I would say anecdotally, I've worked in a number of dioceses that yes, we emphasize communal in some ways, but we also emphasize what I would say is a very personal and private experience of the Mass. And think of it when you're at Mass and you have that person glaring at the kid in the pew because they're distracting her from Jesus, right? There's this kind of very vertical Christology at the Mass that I think is urged by many priests, lay ministers, and stuff like that. So I guess, how do you think seminaries could better form clergy and lay ministries could be better formed to emphasize the communal dimension of liturgy and Eucharist, not simply as kind of high sacrifice at the altar that happens up there, but that we, the body of Christ, are becoming Eucharist, and to do that communal part.
Yeah, that's great. I think seminaries do this great, actually. Sacred Heart, all the seminarians there, right? They're at prayer together every day. They know the liturgy of the hours. They know the music, right? It's highly ritualistic. I think seminaries are right. Victor Turner, the anthropologist, is a great experience of communitas. And a lot of it has to do with that they do all this stuff together almost every day of the week. It's very powerful, I think, for many seminarians to experience that. I don't know where you experience something like that. But I would add then, what can we do? I would just go back to the ritual music. I don't know if that answers your question. I just think if we all knew the songs better and more heartfelt, I think it would help. So hopefully that's and local parishes. See, the local parish is only going to hear it once a week. Doesn't it say in Advent and Lent we can use the same responsorial psalm the whole week, the whole 6 weeks of Lent and the whole 4 weeks of Advent? I think it's in the sacramentary. We never do that. I don't know. I think that would be one way of doing it, repeating and getting to know the music. Yes.
I agree wholeheartedly with one of the comments you made about building community in special small groups. That has taken off gangbusters at our parish of about 1,900 families. We're a suburb in Detroit, so hello. And I think people are feeling like it's their church, it's their parish, because they're involved in the Rosary Makers group, because they're involved in a small initiative of intercessory prayer, okay? So total agreement there. As a parish staff person, the more groups we add, like you say, creates a bit of stress and tension on resources, and sometimes in the groups, and you do have to step in. I hear you say we need to be there at night, and if you read Rebuilt, we need to be there on the weekend. And I don't know how you're going to have staff people who have spouses and children who are going to be there at night and on the weekend instead of during the day. So we end up having meetings and communicating and working with retirees, trying to develop programs for young adults. I would love to have an open discussion about how we can bridge this gap. It's tough. I have no idea, right, at that gap. And, the seniors can help out, and,
I know a lot of the youth groups in the diocese, they have volunteers, but then something goes on in the family and they leave, right? I mean, yeah, and then so I'm really arguing for much more robust parish staffs, right? More people. I don't know where the money's coming from, though. Right, neither do I. But yeah, exactly. No, I know. Yeah, I don't know how, but I think it's needed. As you know, in Detroit, just in the time that I've been there, 34 years, we've closed 100 parishes. And it's just, man, in the local parishes where it's happening, it's got to happen there. So, everybody, I don't know how, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. But I think that's what's needed. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's give you money. No, I can't do that.
Yeah. There's more money, yeah.
Thank you for your talk. It gave me a lot of wonderful things to think about. When you were reflecting about perhaps a homily, and I missed a little, I kind of came at the end of this, I was dealing with my 11-month-old son, but you talked about perhaps a homily, or this is a pipe dream about staying here, not moving. I think in some ways the parish that I'm at in the northern suburb of Indianapolis, it's even before that. It's staying here for the high feasts. We see a dramatic amount of our parishioners, partly because we live in a very transient community. They're not from where we are, that at Christmas, they go to their grandparents or their parents' house for Christmas, and our parish is filled with those who aren't a part of our community, which makes it difficult to find liturgical ministers for our high feasts, because those people are going other place. Or in our community as well, for Easter, spring break, the past 3 years has hit on Easter. And so our families, because they can afford to, are traveling to a nice, sunny, warm place because they work hard, and this is the week that they can have to take their kids. And so we're even at I was hoping to do a big campaign. It's take a day for Jesus, because this year our spring break hit after Easter. So what I wanted to do is make a big push. Hey, let's tell our people, stay here for Easter and then leave for spring break, and then take a day off and take your kids out of school for one more day. Take that day at the end of spring break for Jesus. You still get your spring break and enjoy your time in the sun, but celebrate for us liturgically on this great high feast.
Yeah.
So it's even starting before that. People are
Before
just
that, yeah.
leaving and don't have that sense of community.
Yeah.
So
Well, that's a great point. I mean, try it. Why not? I mean, give it
I'm
a
not the
try.
pastor, but
yeah, you're not the
we'll
pastor,
see.
right? But I don't know. I would say, yeah, I think that's a good idea to try it. But it's so ingrained again. I can remember my brother Pat got married and moved away. Then he fixed that house up, right? And then he sold it for a little profit and moved further away. And then fixed that one up, moved further away. And now he's about an hour and a half from me. And I see him less and less and less each move, right? The relationship has frayed. It's thinned out each time. But what do we call that? It's called upward social mobility, right? And we pat him on the back. Nice house, Pat. Nice house. Nice house. I mean, we support one another in this mobility. Yeah, I don't know, but that's why I say I don't know if a homily's going to do it, stay put, or if you're the DRE or whoever. But I don't know. I would say, yeah, why not try it? But they should stay for the feast, right? Yeah, and that's a major problem too. And we just don't think that way, right? After I got married, I saw a friend from a long time ago as kids, and he said, "Oh, Mike, nice to meet you. Where are you living?" I said, "In Redford." He goes, "Oh, you're still there?" Right, as if there's something wrong with it. It's just the way it is. And the Catholic Church, I don't know, that's been the genius of Catholic parishes, right? The local scene. And
I think there is a younger generation that, sorry, I just...
no, I don't know, yeah, I'm just yakking too.
So I think there is a younger generation that does see value in what you're talking about and is investing into that. Is trying to form communities. And it takes active resisting to it because
Yeah.
you do get opportunities to move and investing in friendships and those relationships, those communities.
Yeah.
You know, my friend moved into a community up in, I think it's right outside of St. Paul, that the parish or community around the parish is advocating, encouraging families to move into a community to live by each
Yeah.
other.
Yeah, I call it the modified extended family. You know, you still have your own nuclear household, you know, but you're nearby. You're within a 5-mile radius. You know, you can ride your bike or whatever. Yeah, so that's, yeah. I mean, I'm all for that kind of thing, too. We're trying to do it where I'm at, but, you know. But the problem is, once you say, okay, I'm going to do this, right, then everybody around you moves. You know, so then you, no, that didn't work. But, yeah. Oh, sorry.
Hi.
Yeah.
You mentioned ritual dynamics earlier, and
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask you if you know people like Bruce Kapfer or Don Hundelman talk about the torquing out of ritual dynamics to torque out into the everyday life of participants. And I wanted to ask if like there's certain things specifically in the dynamics, just the ritual dynamics of the Mass that you feel like, you know, do this and more potently
Yeah.
than other things in just those dynamics.
Well, one of them, kids love processions. I don't know, why can't we have more robust processions and get the kids processing? I mean, even the blessing, the water rite during the Easter season, why can't we all process up to the pastor and be blessed by him, you know, instead of him walking around? You know, I have the whole community walking. And I don't think it would take and kids love that kind of stuff, right? And then if we knew a song by heart, as we processed around, I think that would be powerful. You know, yeah, so. But yeah, so ritual dynamics, so right, here's a whole epistemology here about the way we know and understand things. Durkheim was, right, against the Enlightenment philosophers on this, and was really fighting Kant in particular, and saying, no, it's in the rituals, it's in the doing stuff together that we come to understand, right? Yeah, so yeah, that's why he did a big push on that. And we all have that sensibility, I think, is involved with liturgy, that it can be that powerful. But the ritual dynamics within it, so that would be one of them, I think. I don't know. I don't have to do it, so, you know.
I do a lot with stewardship, and one of the things that I try to teach in my seminars is building those casual connections, card groups, whatever, and we hear a lot of those sorts of things like, well, they take up all the space, but they build so much. And that's one that highly functioning stewardship parishes do a lot of, is our place is here for you to use. If you're a local group and needs a place, it creates that communal space. So I just wanted to echo that and say that's a spot on point.
Yeah. You know, it's just a good point because, you know, just on that, you know, a couple of the books that are really popular right now, like Rebuilt, you know, and there's another one, I can't remember.
Divine Renovation.
Divine Renovation. In particular, he talks about the card group, and I'm reading it going, what's wrong with the card group? You know, when he's saying that it doesn't fit the religious calendar or whatever. And I have a problem with that. Sociologically, I don't agree. I think, and Rebuilt had the first 90 pages, I don't think are that good because what is he doing? He's cutting down Catholics, if you ask me. That's what it sounds like, you know, that. And I'm telling you, the people in the pew, the 30% who attend, we do not want to beat up on these people. Sociologically, they're super Catholics. I mean, they're there and they give their envelope? Are you kidding? You know, we don't want to do that. Now, the second half of those books are really good. They got a lot of great ideas. I think in particular, Rebuilt, having strong staffs, etc. I'm all with them there, but I don't want to, right, my dad's still the best Catholic I know, right? And He doesn't know anything about any of this stuff, but he does it, right? So, yeah.
I'm sorry, I
Yeah,
should have
sure,
prefaced
so,
it with 3 points. So my second point is, completely lost my mind here. But my third point is this, is just skip over number 2. But, talking about these sorts of things is one of the ways processions, sorry, that's my second point. Processions, the collection of gifts. In all my parishes, instead of passing baskets or walking with, it creates another procession and people love it. And the kids love it. And it helps give them that sense of ownership of, I'm putting something in the basket, this is taking care of things. As we announce the collections, we also, said, children, today we're going to be taking care of poor people in the developing world, something like that. And then my third point, you don't have to discuss any of these.
But thanks, that's a great one. That's a good
It's an easy one, too. Although your hospitality folks might not like you because they like with the baskets, but it moves so fast because we have 2 or 3 baskets, depending on how many collections we have. They just walk up, put all their gifts down, and it's fast. But the third point, from a sociological perspective, the way we use architecture in sociological spheres, whether it be an airport or even in this room, I think that's one that gets major underlooked because so frequently we think of churches being like in a sociofugal setup, and where some of the churches where you get that sociopedal setup, where you can see other people's faces, where the altar is the center of activity, but the fact that, oh, I haven't seen him in ages. I need to make a point of that. As opposed to just seeing the back of his head, I might see their face or catch their eye or see a teardrop from someone's eye and say, I'm going to go by and talk to her after Mass. And I think that's one area where we so frequently, church must look like this, like some sort of a lecture hall or something like that, as opposed to a graduate seminar where we're all important. The important thing is in the middle, but we're all important to this process. And I think architecture is one of those pieces that very few people talk about, but that's one that where we really get hampered, because if you're normal Sunday Mass and they're all sitting all over the place, at the very least, if they're at least able to see each other's eyes every once in a while, I think it can bring a change to the community.
The dynamic,
so,
sure.
Yep.
I mean, that might work. I think architecture varies. Different styles might work for different situations, but yeah, certainly if it possibly could. I've seen it where straight up and down works just as well too, but was I going to say one thing on that, but yeah, architecture certainly is something that probably, anything that facilitates processions, that would, yeah. Whatever you can do architecturally, they have more rhythm.
This is the last comment.
Okay.
So just kind of, I wanted to address one of the comments that Michael had made in your presentation. I think that we kind of need to have sort of a healthy tension between community and personal. In a personal relationship with Christ doesn't involve a purely individualistic relationship, because I think you can be in a community and be alone. And I think that you can have the external community and not live the faith at home.
Yeah.
So you can sort of have this maybe artificial bubble, if you will, but you haven't really internalized that this is truly about growing in Christ in the community, of course.
Yeah.
And there are practices in our parishes that I think, and I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, other than, you did mention the music and the processions, but I think that the mega churches, for instance, that has killed any sense of community. So if you have a parish with 6,000 families, how does the pastor or the associate get to know anybody? How does anybody get to know anybody? So at best, you have the 9 o'clock group or the 10 o'clock group or the evening group, or let's go to the 7 o'clock because it's quickly 7 in the morning, no music, and we can just get in and get out.
Yeah.
So, and even our own rituals, we kind of foster this idea, well, let's just do the baptism after Mass, where it's all, God forbid we extend the Mass. So I think that definitely there's our tendencies to move towards the more comfortable, but I wouldn't necessarily say that we need to negate the personal, and I would say that we need to have
to negate the personal. So let me take that one first. Well, now let me just take quickly about the big churches. No, let me go back to the personal. The personal relationship with Jesus and the communal relationship with Jesus. Yeah, I mean, actually, it's both and, right? It's just that when in my studying the new evangelization, it just, it's kind of my interpretation from a sociological point of view. But here's one of the lines I heard over and over, like a ritual incantation. And we like ritual incantations for the most part, right? Because we know it over and over. So I go to a lot of these new evangelization events in several parishes. I've been in about 15 parishes. And these new evangelization leaders come in, and they're very good, right? I mean, 99% of them, they're very good. But they have this one line where they say, and they're talking mostly to Catholics who attend, right? These people attend, they're even here for this event. And they say, you have been catechized and you have been sacramentalized, but you haven't been evangelized because you don't have a personal relationship with Jesus. And I don't know. It just does not sit well with me. I don't even know if there's something theologically wrong with that. I don't know. I'm not a theologian, but right. What do you mean I've been sacramentalized, but I don't know Jesus? I don't. So there's such an emphasis on the personal relationship in lots of these events that I just think they miss this, that these people have found Christ in this community. In fact, they're here gathered. They come to Mass on Sunday. I think it's been emphasized to the point where we've kind of lost the communal aspect. And really, the Catholic have always emphasized the Eucharist as the heart of who we are, and that's as a community. Certainly, we need a personal relationship. Within the new evangelization, I think we just need to be careful about it, is my sense. And, of course, what follows from that is interviewing a lot of parishioners afterward. I mean, they don't pick up on that, right? But they do say, well, it sure sounds Protestant, right? And nothing wrong with that per se, but in saying that, they feel a little picked at, I think. I know I do, but that's because I know this stuff,
I guess I kind of see it like as a family, if you don't interact with each other and truly have a relationship, you can be sitting at a table, mom, dad, and kids in community, but have no relationship.
Yeah.
You could have mom and dad not really talking to each other, or the kids not talking, but yet you're in community.
Sure.
I mean, I don't have the answer. It's just an observation.
Yeah. I don't either. Good. Thank you.
Well, I think you all are ready to talk, so let's thank Mike for being with us today.